A vanished aristocrat, a dazzling life reduced to skeletal remains in a cliffside ditch. This is not fiction, it is all real. On November 5th, 2004, Anthony Ashley Cooper, the 66-year-old 10th Earl of Shaftesbury, disappeared from a Kent hotel. 5 months later, his decomposed body was discovered in a ravine near Thilsomer on the French Riviera. The suspects? His glamorous third wife and her brother. The motives? Money, lust, and betrayal. This is a story of how privilege turned into poison and how love turned lethal. The Shaftesbury title carried centuries of prestige. The family's lineage traced back to the 17th century, a dynasty of political power, social reform, and wealth. The first Earl of Shaftesbury was a political heavyweight in the court of King Charles II. Successive generations cemented the family's reputation as reformers and patrons of the arts. The seventh Earl was immortalized in the heart of London, Shaftesbury Avenue and the famous arrow statue standing as reminders of the family name. Anthony inherited not just a title but also the sprawling ancestral seat, Street Giles House in Dorset. It was a place of history and beauty, but also a burden. Years of neglect had left the house in disrepair. The cost of maintaining it was colossal, and like many of his aristocratic peers, Anthony found himself land-rich but cash-poor. He was charming, charismatic, and flamboyant. Photographs from the early 2000s show him dressing flashy, wearing shirts and bright jackets, and often a splash of pink. He was equally comfortable at a formal dinner in London or a smoky nightclub in Cannes. But behind the image of the pleasure-loving aristocrat lay a man juggling debts and an increasingly complicated personal life. By the late 1990s, Anthony had drifted away from the cold stone corridors of St. Giles House. The French Riviera offered warmth, glamour, and anonymity. In Cannes and Nice, the Earl could live the life he wanted, luxurious, hedonistic, and free from the scrutiny of British society pages. He frequented nightclubs, dined in Michelin-starred restaurants, and chartered yachts. Those who knew him say he enjoyed the company of beautiful women and the thrill of extravagance. But this lifestyle came at a price. His spending was reckless, his debts mounting. It was in this glittering but dangerous world that Anthony met Jamila M'Barek in 2002. Jamila was striking, tall, poised, with a kind of beauty that turned heads. A former Playboy model, she had also worked as a high-end escort. They met through an escort agency, and for Anthony, it was instant infatuation. For Jamila, the Earl represented stability, luxury, and the prestige of an ancient title. Within months, they were married. Jamila became the Countess of Shaftesbury, and Anthony showered her with gifts: a converted windmill in the south of France, a luxury apartment in Cannes, domestic staff, a high-end car, and a monthly allowance that sometimes reached 10,000 euros. The marriage, however, was far from the fairy tale it appeared. Anthony's taste for the nightlife hadn't diminished, and Jamila's patience had its limits. Friends described arguments, often about money, sometimes about Anthony's absences or infidelities. By early 2004, the financial strain was undeniable. Anthony was selling off assets to maintain appearances. In April that year, he told Jamila he wanted a divorce. For her, the consequences would be catastrophic. She stood to lose the properties, the allowance, and any claim to the Shaftesbury name. It was a turning point, one that prosecutors would later argue set a deadly chain of events into motion. On November 3rd, 2004, Anthony arrived in Nice. The next day, he checked into the Noga Hilton in Cannes, one of the Riviera's most luxurious hotels. He was seen dining alone, making phone calls in the lobby. On November 5th, he checked out. From that moment, the Earl of Shaftesbury vanished. At first, his disappearance was treated as a mystery. Given his lifestyle, it wasn't unthinkable that he had gone off on a whim, perhaps traveling incognito. But when days passed without any contact, his family grew concerned. Anthony was many things, but he wasn't in the habit of disappearing without word. Theories began to swirl. Some speculated about Mafia connections, given the Riviera's reputation in Anthony's social circles. Others wondered if he had staged his own disappearance to escape debts or personal scandal. But French police were soon focusing on a more personal lead: his wife, Jamila. In February 2005, while receiving psychiatric treatment, Jamila broke down. Through tears, she told investigators that her brother, Mohammed M'Barek, had strangled Anthony during an argument at her apartment. She claimed Anthony had been threatening to cut her off financially, and Mohammed, protective and hot-tempered, had acted impulsively, but the police suspected premeditation. Wiretaps of Jamila's phone calls painted a darker picture. They revealed conversations about a €150,000 payment to her brother and discussions about disposing of Anthony's body. GPS data from her phone showed she had been near a remote ravine outside Thilsomer just days before Anthony's disappearance. On April 5, 2005, investigators found skeletal remains in a steep, overgrown ravine. DNA confirmed the identity: Anthony Ashley Cooper, the 10th Earl of Shaftesbury. Forensic analysis was damning. His larynx was fractured, a classic sign of manual strangulation. His ankle had been broken, likely during the struggle or in the process of moving his body. The state of decomposition confirmed he had been there for months. With a body, a confession, and corroborating evidence, prosecutors built their case. The trial opened in May 2007 in Nice. It was a media spectacle, an aristocratic murder in one of Europe's most glamorous settings. Jamila arrived in court dressed elegantly, her composure at odds with the charges against her. Mohammed appeared more subdued. Jamila's defense claimed the killing was accidental. She insisted her brother had acted without her instruction and that she had only helped move the body because she was terrified. Mohammed claimed he had lost control during an argument and never intended to kill the Earl. The prosecution countered with the wiretap recordings, the €150,000 payment, and the GPS evidence. They argued it was a calculated murder motivated by greed. One particularly chilling moment came when Mohammed demonstrated in court how he had strangled Anthony, a brief but haunting reenactment that left the room silent. After deliberation, the jury convicted both Jamila and Mohammed of murder. Each received a sentence of 25 years in prison. In 2009, Jamila's sentence was reduced to 20 years on appeal, the court citing her lesser role in the act itself. In reality, she served just 9 years before her release, moving to Switzerland shortly after. Mohammed remained behind bars. The case devastated the Shaftesbury family. Just a month after Anthony's body was found, his eldest son, also named Anthony, died of a heart attack at the age of 27. This left the youngest son, Nicholas Ashley Cooper, to inherit the title. Nicholas had been living in New York, working as a DJ. The murder of his father and the sudden death of his brother brought him back to England. Inheriting Street Giles House in its crumbling state, he undertook the enormous task of restoring it, determined to preserve the family's legacy despite the scandal. The murder of the 10th Earl of Shaftesbury is a story where centuries of aristocratic history collided with modern decadence, greed, and betrayal. It is a reminder that titles and wealth are no safeguard against the most basic and destructive human impulses. Anthony's life was one of privilege, but also of excess. His death was brutal, his legacy marred by scandal. Yet, through the efforts of his surviving son, the Shaftesbury name endures, forever shadowed by the events of November 2004, when an Earl vanished, and the truth lay hidden in a French ravine. For more thrilling true crime royal stories, like and subscribe.